A farmer's son was secretly making a gun. That boy was Mikhail Kalashnikov. Even as a child, he was very interested in weapons. He built a shotgun using metal pipes and a wooden handle. But when he tried to test it on a chicken, his father caught him and immediately took the gun away. The story moves to 1941 during World War II, when intense battles were happening between the Soviet Union and Germany. By then, Kalash had grown up and was serving as a tank operator with the rank of senior sergeant. But the Germans had much more advanced weapons, and Soviet tanks were destroyed one by one. Under heavy attack, Kalash continued fighting, trying to hold his position until he had no choice but to move forward and risk his life. In the chaos, enemies were killing each other. Kalash was shot in the shoulder and later woke up in a camp. His injury made it impossible for him to continue fighting, so he was sent to a hospital with other injured soldiers. On the way, they met another unit heading to the front lines. A captain warned Lieutenant Johann to stay alert because German soldiers were still everywhere. Soon after, the truck carrying Kalash got stuck in the mud. Everyone got out to push, but no matter how hard they tried, the truck wouldn't move. Kalash suggested finding a horse in a nearby village, and Lieutenant Johann agreed, taking his weapon in case something went wrong. On the way, Kalash asked about Johann's gun, a model he had never seen before. Johann said it was a new automatic rifle still under testing. As they neared the village, Johann gave Kalash a pistol and told him to stay back and watch. There was a horse there, but just as Johann approached the house, something suddenly happened. Luckily, Johann survived. And with help from the horse's owner, they both returned safely. On the way back, Kalash, still curious, took apart the jammed gun and found the problem.
Вода попала. Подморозило сегодня. Вот и смерзлись патроны. А пружинка-то слабая.
Johann was surprised and asked how Kalash knew so much about guns. Kalash simply said he had tried making one before. After the truck was finally freed, they continued to the hospital. Kalash stayed there for a long time because his shoulder injury was serious. In late 1941, he was given leave and sent back to his village to recover. On the train, Kalash shared a cabin with other injured soldiers. There, he met a soldier from Kazakhstan and they started talking. Kalash told him he used to work as a mechanic at a railway station in Kazakhstan until he was fired for secretly making a homemade shotgun.
Самострелы, дробовики.
He also said that while recovering in the hospital, he had already begun designing a new automatic weapon, one he believed could compete with German guns. The soldier from Kazakhstan liked the idea and encouraged Kalash to finish it. That support gave him strong motivation. When the train arrived at Madai station, he got off and went straight to the railway depot where he used to work. There, he met the owner, Pavel, and explained his plan to build a new automatic rifle. But Pavel refused. The last time Kalash's homemade gun was discovered by the police, Pavel had been detained for 2 days. Kalash was about to give up and go home, but then a high-ranking officer stepped off the train. Seeing the opportunity, Kalash approached Colonel Gazarov and showed him his idea, along with the blueprints for an automatic rifle. He confidently said that his design could change the situation. At that time, Soviet forces were losing to German automatic weapons that could fire many rounds in just seconds. Impressed, the colonel immediately gave him a recommendation letter, allowing Kalash to use Pavel's factory. After that, Pavel had no choice but to agree. He quickly called his workers and told them to prepare the workshop and tools for Kalash. Because working with only one arm was very difficult, Kalash asked Pavel for some workers to help him, but Pavel refused. All the workers were already busy, and Pavel believed that letting Kalash use the workshop was already enough. Even so, Kalash did not give up. He continued working to build his design using only one good arm. Then one day, several workers came to him on their own and offered to help. Kalash was very grateful because they were all highly skilled. They began helping him after work, carefully making each part of the weapon. Piece by piece, the rifle slowly took shape. Finally, Kalash completed the first prototype of his automatic firearm. Without wasting time, they tested it right away, with many workers watching. The next day, Kalash traveled to Alma-Ata to meet Colonel Gazarov, but he had already gone to the front lines, and a new officer had taken his place. Kalash asked to meet the new colonel and showed him the rifle he had made. Instead of listening, the officers became suspicious and quickly took him to another room. Shortly after, another officer arrived. The guards showed the rifle that Kalash had brought. The officer examined it and quickly realized he decided to send the weapon to a firearms specialist named Andrei Ivanovich for evaluation. When they tested the weapon, they noticed right away that its internal mechanism was different from others. What surprised them the most was its accuracy, which was better than the automatic rifles they were currently developing. Kalash was then released and immediately taken to meet Ivan. During their discussion, Ivan said he would take Kalash's rifle as a sample to General Krabatkin, the commander of the Central Asian District. If the general approved it, Kalash would be allowed to join the National Soviet Rifle Design Competition, and if he won, his weapon would be mass-produced. Ivanovich also offered to help improve the rifle's accuracy and refine its overall design. Soon after, the general and several officers came to test the rifle themselves. They tested it in both automatic mode and single-shot mode, and the general was very impressed with its accuracy. In the end, he gave Kalash a personal recommendation letter, allowing him to join the competition as a representative of the Turkmenistan district. In 1943, Kalash arrived at the Kremlin in Moscow and was guided by a major to the Central Weapons Design Bureau. On the way, he met a well-known firearms designer, Major Alexei Sudayev, who was also competing in the competition. They quickly became friends, and Alexei joked that whoever lost would have to buy the other a beer. When Kalash finally met the supervising major, there was some hesitation at first because he had no formal education in weapon design. However, the recommendation letter from General Krab carried enough weight, so he was accepted. Kalash was then introduced to Colonel Vasily Fedorovich, who would provide everything he needed to build his rifle. As they walked to his workspace, Kalash realized that many of the participants were already experienced inventors. He was surprised to find himself competing alongside well-known figures like Georgy Shpagin. He was the creator of the PPSH submachine gun. When Colonel Vasily asked for the rifle's design sketches, Kalash could not provide them because the parts had previously been made without proper drawings at Pavel's factory. Fortunately, Colonel Vasily understood the situation and called a designer named Ekaterina Moiseva to help him. From that moment, Kalash began to develop feelings for Moiseva. Both of them agreed on the time and she left in a hurry. At a weapons testing range, Kalash learned that Degtyaryov, a famous designer known for machine guns and heavy anti-tank weapons, was also present. He wondered who he was, but not all of his mentors were there. The day of working together arrived, and Kalash felt awkward and nervous when Moiseva entered his workshop. Perhaps her charming beauty made his heart race. Her silence made him a little shy, and he suddenly felt like a child. From time to time, he found reasons to watch her while she worked, but over time, they grew closer. A few days later, when the sketches were finally completed, Kalash gave her a small gift, some sugar. Seeing her warm response, he wanted to get to know her better. He walked her home and learned that she was a widow with a child. Kalash smiled, believing he still had a chance with her. After a series of evaluations, the results were announced, and Kalash's rifle did not win. The winner was Alexei, but the bet he had made turned out to be just a joke. Instead, Alexei encouraged Kalash to keep improving his work for the next competition. Colonel Vasily also encouraged him and told him to return to Alma-Ata to develop a better design. Before leaving, Kalash looked at Ekaterina one last time while she was working at her desk, but he did not get the chance to say goodbye. In 1944, Kalash returned to Alma-Ata and went straight to meet General Krab. The general looked disappointed and made it clear that Kalash had to win the next competition. With both pressure and encouragement, Kalash immediately began working on a new rifle design, staying up late night after night to complete it. With help from Ivan and the factory workers, the new design slowly took shape, and the building process went smoothly. During this time, Kalash added several improvements that made the rifle much better than his previous version. When tested, the new rifle showed clearly improved accuracy. One day, a captain from the National Security Service named Lobo arrived. He had been assigned by General Krab to escort Kalash and transport the rifle to Golutvan. While they were at the station, a man inside one of the train holding cells called out and asked about Kalash. To Kalash's shock, the man was his older brother, who had been imprisoned for opposing the government. Seeing him in that condition made Kalash very sad. But when Captain Lobov asked who the man was, Kalash denied knowing him. However, Lobov became suspicious and thought Kalash might be an anti-government rebel pretending to be a weapons designer. Because of this, they got into a short fight. But Kalash managed to overpower him and explain the truth. He said he had nothing to do with his brother's actions. He told Lobov that the last time he saw his brother was when they were children, and he was simply grateful to know that his brother was still alive. When they arrived in Golutvan, the thing that made Kalash happiest was seeing Moiseva again. From then on, he spent most of his time with her. As time passed, they grew closer and eventually became a couple. Meanwhile, Kalash continued testing and improving his rifle every day. Finally, the time came to announce the results. But the committee declared that none of the rifles met the technical requirements. Everyone was disappointed, but they were given another chance to develop new designs since the war was not over yet. Feeling discouraged, Kalash went to a military doctor and asked to be allowed to return to the front lines. But the rules did not allow it because of his condition. He still could not fight. While feeling frustrated, he met Colonel Vasily again. Once more, Vasily encouraged him. He believed Kalash still had great potential and could create an even better design. He also gave Kalash another opportunity. Kalash would be given his own department and work with skilled people chosen by Vasily to develop his next design more thoroughly. The only thing that helped Kalash feel better was the time he spent with Moiseva. Unexpectedly, her mother came to visit. They talked for a while, but at first, her mother did not approve of their relationship. She was worried and did not want her daughter to be hurt again like before. Hearing this, Kalash stood up and, without hesitation, proposed to Moiseva. He promised that he would always stay by her side. One day, soldiers suddenly ran through the building, shouting that the war was over. Everyone gathered and listened, as Stalin's announcement was broadcast on the radio. It was the happiest moment for all the soldiers there, including Kalash. But at the same time, Kalash was worried that his rifle project might be stopped, especially since he had just finished his newest prototype. To be sure, the next day he went to his superior and asked about the future of the project. Fortunately, headquarters decided to continue. In fact, they wanted designers to create weapons that were even more advanced than before. Hearing this, Kalash felt motivated again. In the following days, he and his team continued improving the design, working to create the best rifle possible. One day, Alexei came to visit and reviewed Kalash's design. He was impressed and suggested simplifying the internal mechanism so it would be easier to use. In 1947, Kalash traveled to Kovrov to begin the competition. There, he met a man named Alexander Zaitisov, who was assigned as his assistant. The two of them went to a weapons factory and started building the rifle using the best materials available. This time, they worked side by side, carefully crafting each part with precision. They also simplified the internal mechanism, just as Alexei had suggested. Every night, Kalash thought only about the rifle. He wanted this new model to work perfectly in every condition. After many days, the rifle was finally completed. On that same day, Kalash asked his superior for permission to run a field test, but the testing range was already fully booked, so he was told to wait. Kalash, already eager and impatient, decided he could not wait any longer. He went outside into an open field and tested the rifle himself by firing at a sand-filled drum. This immediately caught the attention of nearby soldiers, and Kalash was quickly detained for breaking the rules by firing outside the designated testing area. Even so, he showed no sign of regret. Instead, Kalash was excited to see that both firing modes of his rifle worked perfectly. Soon after, he was taken to meet General Degtyaryov, who was also one of his rivals in the competition. The general was impressed by Kalash's dedication and asked to see his rifle. At first, Kalash hesitated because he feared his design might be copied, but he eventually agreed and presented it. To his surprise, after carefully examining the weapon, General Degtyaryov decided to withdraw from the competition. He admitted that Kalash's rifle had greater potential than his own design and openly praised his natural talent, especially since Kalash had never received formal training in weapons engineering. Finally, the long-awaited testing day arrived. Before testing accuracy, each rifle was first submerged in water to test its endurance, then fired to check its precision. After that, the rifles were buried in sand and tested again to see if they would still function properly. One by one, all the rifles showed their weaknesses, and then it was Kalash's turn. His rifle was first submerged in water, then taken out and fired, and it worked perfectly. Next, it was buried in sand, and once again, it fired without any problems. The only rifle that passed every single test was Kalash's. After his weapon was officially approved, Kalash returned to Moiseva, and she told him that she was pregnant. He was overjoyed. At that moment, it felt like everything he had dreamed of was finally coming true. Moscow, 1949. His rifle was now being produced on a massive scale, and Kalash had received an award from Stalin. One day, a high-ranking officer introduced him to a group of soldiers as the creator of the rifle they were carrying. The officer then gave him leave and encouraged him to return home to visit his mother. After many years, Kalash finally returned to his childhood home with Moiseva and their 2 daughters. The rifle he created has been produced in more than 200 million units, and the AK-47 became one of the most iconic weapons of the 20th century. He passed away in 2013 at 94, but his creation is still used around the world today.